Welcome to Our Jewish Roots.
From Caesarea Maritime, he appealed to Rome. And inasmuch as at various times he had to get his own voyage, this time it was provided for him courtesy of the empire. He makes his way to Rome, and there he's imprisoned. You know, a lot of times people that are in prison, their minds are just all absorbed in their own problems. But Paul, he wasn't just absorbed in his own problems. He thought of the world beyond him. And what does he do? He writes letters. He writes letters to those faraway places. He's looking to reach out and bring other people into his world through mail. Not only that, Luke tells us in Acts that when he's imprisoned, he's able to get some word out, and the city of Rome's Jewish leaders come to him. And Paul says, listen, there's been a big misunderstanding here because I have done nothing against the teaching, against the traditions of our fathers. I'm a Jew among Jews. I believe the Messiah has come true, but he never understood that as making him non-Jewish or offending the cultural mores that go along with being Jewish. Paul was in a very conciliatory mood when he dealt with the Romans. He was also in a very conciliatory mood when he picked up his pen, as evidenced by some of the letters that he wrote. Picking up in verse 19, what does this rabbi from Tarsus say? He says, "It pleased the Father that in him all the fullness should dwell." He has just said that this Yeshua, this Messiah Jesus, is all things. And the Greek here is pleroma, the fullness. This Jesus is very potent, very powerful. In him, this fullness dwells, in verse 20, and by him then, he says, and this is the good news, he says, by him he can reconcile all things to himself. That is, individuals that are estranged from God can be brought near to God through the person of Jesus. Individuals that are estranged one from another can do much the same. He says in verse 21, and you who once were alienated in your mind by wicked works, he now has reconciled. I want you to open up your Bibles, if you will, and I want you to see how he tells the Ephesians, both Jews and non-Jews alike, that God has built a new house. He says in chapter 2 that a new house has been built, and Jews and Gentiles alike as equals are pillars in the new house, and brethren and friends in the new economy. He says in chapter 2, verse 1, that individuals that were dead in their sins and trespasses were made alive in the Messiah. The word to sin, etymologically in the Hebrew Bible, comes from a word to stray. To miss the mark. It's like an arrow. You shoot for the target, but it veers off. They're individuals that miss the mark in life. They sin. He says here in verse 14 that Jews and non-Jews that were alienated one from another now have peace by a God who's broken down the wall of a partition and abolished the enmity in verse 15 in order in verse 16 to then reconcile them one to another.